Alright, so a couple people asked me to make a Valda tips and tricks and talents video. These should be intuitive and second nature for any Valda main. Also, thank you for 100 subs. Anyway, here you go. So, hi, my name is Shiran. I've pretty much quit playing solos and trios this past season, so keep in mind that these things will be centered around duos logic. I'm a degen dagger main because I have an unhealthy obsession with knives outside of the game. I do like dual blades and katana as a second and third choice. I hate nunchucks though, both using them and having them used on me. Anyway, my glyphs are centered around energy. Energy glyphs should be every beginner's bread and butter regardless of hero or weapon choice. Regarding skills, I've messed with all the variants, but I have a preference for F3 and V1. Mostly because they can be both used aggressively and defensively. Keep in mind that this video is not a combo tutorial, instead a situational tips and tricks for Valda video. So here are the base damage values for purple weapons, no jades, for both V1 and V3. My aim is absolute trash, but if it wasn't, I would consider taking V3 simply because you can dish out an absurd amount of damage. I don't know if there is another ult out there that can deal over 4k damage if executed perfectly. This video's ult related tips refer interchangeably to V1 and V3 because both give you an HP bar to tank with. V2 doesn't provide that. Anyway, so my favorite thing to do with Valda's ult is to drown enemies in storm damage. It can be a little bit tricky and is in fact a recipe for disaster when setting up against the edge of late storms, especially if your HP is low. A stage 4 corruption will deal 49 damage per tick, so even a few seconds can prove fatal either to you or your enemy. It can be useful though if they don't struggle or if they begin struggling too late. It's always rather amusing to watch them realize what I'm doing. Your ult's HP will deplete much faster in late storms, so make sure to keep an eye on that. On the other end of the spectrum, drowning your enemies in early storms is outright ineffective. In this particular case here, my partner was down and without an extra life. The storm corruption was at Shadow 1 and was only doing like 27 damage per tick. And stalling here was a bad mistake because not only did it do like no damage to her, but I gave her ally time to return and 2v1 me. If anything, I should have tried to get away from them, but it didn't work out. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this, but Valda's ult can be used to tank a lot of things, namely Celestia's Waterwheel, Poison, Fire. As you can see in this clip, a Waterwheel can easily deplete full gold armor. It can also fully deplete your ult's HP bar, so it's in your best interest not to cast it too early. Casting too late, on the other hand, will obviously eat at your armor and HP, but may allow you to hit someone with your water spear if they somehow manage to survive. Getting hit by poison spray will deal 75 damage per tick over 11 seconds for a total of 825 damage. Keep in mind your HP pool has 1k HP without jades, so if you're poisoned, you should wait it out as long as you can. Here, the enemy got popped out a little bit too early, and you know, we wanted to one-shot him, so I took the chance and almost died to it. In the end it worked out, but it was really risky. Moving on, Fire is a living nightmare. If you sit in it, you will take 100 damage per tick, and then after you leave, you'll take 30 per tick for 5 seconds. Kunomi's and Tarka's fire circle is even worse. Needless to say, don't stand in the fire. Lanterns will stun you for 5 seconds if you hit them, adds up to half an unjaded HP bar at least, so be aware of your surroundings and use that to your advantage. Like storm damage and poison, you can tank fire damage with your ult by just waiting it out. This is especially useful if you need to tank the lingering effects of Kuromi and Tarka's fire circle. As it is right now, their fire circle deals a whopping 100 damage per tick while you stand in it, as well as after you leave it, so that is true pain. Apparently the developers heard our cry, cause I heard they'll be nerfing that in an upcoming patch. If there's a change, I'll stick in the description for ya. A year ago I made a video about Aqua Cure heal, then it got nerfed. Now they buffed it last patch, but it still only affects ally Kuromis. Currently it no longer pops the healing circle. The burst heal still happens, but the healing circle remains. This Kuromi uses the armor circle. Aqua Cure heal will first heal HP and armor for all allies the first time they walk in. Then it continues healing only armor. Unlike before, you can trigger Aqua Cure heal with a V1 or V3 water spear. The wave still doesn't trigger it. Your HP and armor won't get healed while you're in ult. The same rules apply to an HP circle. You'll get a burst armor heal, plus HP obviously, then the circle will go back to only HP heals. If you have procced Aqua Cure heal, with your spear you will not be able to proc a second burst by dropping bubbles on it. This next bit should be intuitive, but if you get parried, rotate your camera 180 degrees to make your recovery safer, quicker, and smoother. Because you surround your weapon with bubbles, chances of your opponent stealing it are significantly lower. It will also help make your reset cleaner. Simply turn your camera towards your own back and retrieve your weapon as the bubbles send you in your opponent's direction. It's the same with every weapon and keeps the opponent away or limits their reinitiation. Most enemies will stay back or naturally dodge to either side, which, if they do, they'll get caught by another bubble. Sweaties, on the other hand, will purposefully push through the space where they were initially caught in, so just be ready for that. Of course, there are special cases with specific weapons and jades. Nuns have Dragon Roar, Spear, Dragon Slayer, Greatsword, and Dagger have their stone forms, but Dragon Roar has some kind of aim assist. Using your bubbles incorrectly will end up being a waste if Dragon Roar managed to re-catch you. Heck, sometimes the bubbles don't even come out, and a full 180 camera flick seems finicky. Here, the bubbles fail to come out again. My camera is at 90 degrees, and I managed to lose aim assist tracking, but it doesn't feel optimal. What I like to do instead is to aim at my opponent's side, drop bubbles, and then try to tap dodge away. For some reason, aim assist struggles there a little bit more. In most cases, you won't be this close to your enemy, as people with Dragon Roar like to cast it as far away as possible, but in case you are, a 180 camera flick and tap dodge will work just fine. If you're a nunchuck slave and going up against a greatsword user, you can deflect into bubbles instead of releasing that deflection. Deflections by default are very easy to punish. This will allow you to safely reset their stone form and create a window to follow up. When hitting light attacks on stone form, you can abuse it if you're willing to sacrifice your escape, even if the enemy cancels it. You can also purposefully run up to your ally and create a bubble safety net of sorts for them, if they're the ones triggering the stone form. Takeda's ult can be a royal pain, especially if you're not used to how it works. If you're in motion, usually you can dodge or just walk out, even without using your bubbles. But if you get caught in the first hits, your best bet is to cast your bubbles right before the last slash. Casting early will, leave you vulnerable and you'll waste your skill, only to face tank all the hits. Because my aim sucks, I only really use V1, so these use cases are primarily based on V1 logic. An ideal ult happens if you catch all your enemies close together, so they both get hit by splash damage and maybe even direct damage. It's easiest if you push into them, catch them in your bubbles so they don't get too far apart, and then cast your spear. Canceling Viper's ult is common sense, and I'm pretty sure every Valda has done it at some point. It's a good feeling. Even if you don't catch both, remember that your spear has a slight push effect, so you can cast it at your teammates' feet as the enemies get close, and hope that the bounce back effect will give enough time for the stun to end. Something that is slightly less intuitive is simply stalling, and not just for Viper's ultimate, but I'll get into that in the next clip. Here I almost got silenced in Viper's V3, but was lucky enough to cast my ult simultaneously and catch both of them. If you stall, the opponents won't fall until you cast, run out of time, or until they break free, so you and your ally will be safer for longer. Tumulch's Wind Prison is another good example. A good Tumulch team will push you into the sand, keep you there, and your chances for survival are slim. But the prison is small, and they'll be in a tight area, so catching them is pretty easy, and if you catch them and stall, you'll be safe. Other ults to wait out are Matari's and Tarkas, especially if the Tarka is savvy with the infinite katana or greatsword spam. If you don't have the patience to deal with Yoto's ultimate like me, you can return the favor and cancel hers. Just be careful not to cast too early because the Demon Incarnate buff will iframe your wave. In this next clip here, I had no idea that the Yoto would pop her ult, so I cast freely, and like any logical player, the Yoto iframed my wave. But instead of throwing my spear and subjecting myself to Yoto's slashes, I stayed up on my platform to avoid and tank them. Eventually Maka gave me an opportunity to, throw my spear at the Takeda, but you don't always get this lucky. If you want to be toxic and have bad manners, you can go ahead and cancel some F abilities, but that's really only against Yoto Hime or Justina. Just keep in mind that that's really rude. Couple of more things before we go. Don't waste your ult in a Kurumi circle unless it's a fire circle and you're already taking damage from its fire ticks. The enemies don't get raised high enough to not get healed while they hang in the air. Don't waste your ult on a Yuei-shan. His transformation allows him to iframe it, plus he's tanky so you don't deal much damage, and he's super speedy. Shrey's probably safer anyway. While you can stun a transformed monk, he can grab you off your platform as you float on it. It's easy pickings, so don't forget that you can hit shift to move more quickly up there and try to avoid his hand. If you have Skyforce and you land a killing blow with your water spear, your armor is not going to replenish, keep that in mind. Anyway, that is all from me for now. If you have any more Valda related tips, feel free to share them in the comments. If we get enough, I'll happily make another video. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye 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 bye.